Hey everybody, glad you're here. This is the Chase Squirrelson Show, and I'm your host, Chase Squirrelson. And if you're listening right now, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Today's episode is one of those conversations that starts simple and then goes somewhere interesting. So let's jump in. Welcome to the Chase Squirrelson Show. This is Chase Squirrelson, and I'm really prepared today to talk about something and actually try to stay on topic. I want to talk about creativity and hyperfocus today. That's something that go hand in hand. And although ADHD, there are characteristics of us like interrupting and going off on tangents and everything, but we also have the gift of being creative and hyper-focusing on what's important to us, or at least what we think is important to us. For example, last week I was so hyper-focused on preparing one of the episodes when I noticed that my keyboard was dirty. So I decided to do my best to clean every key, and in the process I dislodged a few of the keys and then spent an hour watching videos on how to keyboard repair and restoration. So that's typical for me. Also, hyperfocus, I was doing some broadcasting for a hockey team a number of years ago, doing the play-by-play, and I would prepare for that religiously. I mean, I would be focusing for hours, memorizing jersey numbers and statistics. And my wife a couple times looked into my office. It was on my birthday. And a couple times she said, "Did you see your birthday present?" And I said, "No, I haven't seen it yet. I've been working on this." And she goes, "Okay." And then an hour later, she came back in and said, "Did you see your birthday present yet?" And I go, "No, what birthday present?" And she said, "Well, look over your right shoulder." And over my right shoulder was an 8-foot-tall grandfather clock that was chiming. And I was in that office for 6 hours, and I didn't even hear it chime. And here's this beautiful grandfather clock. So that's the kind of powers of concentration that I can have. I've had some amazing things happen to me that are unbelievable. One time I was at a gala at a local hotel, and I gave my car to a valet. On the way home, I was in a hurry, and the valet pulled up, my car, and I jumped in and drove home. And when I got to the garage door opener didn't open. I, didn't know what to do, so I knocked on the door. It was before cell phones. And what happened was I'd driven the wrong car home. I actually drove someone else's car that looked like my car, and I didn't notice it. I was just focused on getting home, and here I am. And it turned out okay, but it was actually the car of a local sheriff, and he had a good sense of humor, and I was able to drive the car back. But this is the powers of concentration, where I was thinking about a big meeting I was having the next day and didn't notice I was in the wrong car. A benefit of hyper-focusing is that I'm capable of focusing on a 1,000-piece crossword puzzle for hours. I can reach a state where I can see minute changes in the colors that allow me to work through it very quickly. Then I'm jolted back to life, and I actually get a headache after doing that. I can get lost as to what time it is, what is going on around me, like when I actually started the puzzle. One time I actually was working a crossword puzzle at home, and it was before the Super Bowl, and I was getting excited about watching the game. And all of a sudden, in the middle of things, a friend calls me, "What did you think of the first half?" Well, I was still doing the crossword puzzle. I've missed the first half of the Super Bowl. To me, that is something that's very easy for me to happen to. Information about the brain when we're hyper-focusing, when someone like me focuses, their brain isn't more focused than normal. It's just finally getting enough dopamine to lock in. It's really a neurotransmitter tied to motivation. The curiosity, it rewards my brain. That curiosity is what, it launches the dopamine rush, the curiosity, whether it's something good or something bad. My baseline dopamine levels in all HDHers, dopamine levels are lower, which means most tasks like replying to an email or folding laundry can get put aside, just distraction. Those things don't trigger enough excitement for me to hold my attention. So I could be folding the laundry and end up going outside and raking leaves. Something then sparks an interest. I might be folding the laundry while I'm listening to a song or something like that, and the song says something that talks about Sir Lancelot or something, and then I'll go on the internet, maybe researching ancient swords. Where did that come from? I was answering email, I was folding laundry. And my brain is rewarded for staying locked in. The more I do it, the more dopamine keeps coming. So that's why I can play gin rummy online for 2 hours. 2 hours, and I don't even realize I'm doing it, because that reward of winning that hand or losing that hand, and I say, okay, many times I go, okay, I'll play one more hand, and then I got to go do something, and then there's 45 minutes passes. It becomes like a soft reinforcing loop, attention reward, or attention that happens to me when I'm playing online, like a Wordle or maybe crossword puzzles. So I'm starting to realize my brain is not broken. It just runs on a different fuel system than normal or typical brains. I also suffer from, I would call time blindness, and that happens when hyperfocus kicks in and I lose track of external cues like being hungry. So the default mode network and task positive network stops switching normal brains. And I flip between default mode, which is wandering and daydreaming, and task mode, which is focused on problem solving, like needing to pay my bills, or what happens to me and other people with ADHD is our brains get stuck in one mode, either total chaos or total tunnel vision. That's why I can often forget to eat, sleep, or even blink. I notice my eyes can get itchy, and I realize I'm not blinking. It's very much like athletes who talk about being in the flow state where things become easy or natural to them. And that's what it's like for somebody with ADHD, except we don't have an off switch that's readily accessible. I could come up with a really great idea in that mode, or I can spend hours reorganizing a sock drawer or something like that. I mean, it's easy for me to do. I remember when I played hockey at college, I was a goalie. And sometimes after a game I played particularly well, the guy said, "What happened to you? You were like an amazing." And I would think back, I go, I don't know. It just came easy to me. Like I actually knew where the shooter was going to shoot. And that's flow. It's totally absorbed in that game where nothing existed but the players on the other team, my teammates. I knew where everybody was, and I didn't have to work at it. It just came to me. But also, hyperfocus is a way for me to escape, I would say, emotional overload. When I'm overwhelmed, hyperfocus can deal with that. That's why I can play gin rummy for 2 hours, trying to escape from whatever's making me uncomfortable or something I'm worried about. When things get very chaotic or uncertain for me, my brain, often latches onto a task where it feels safe and in control. It's like saying the world is too loud and unpredictable, so I'll climb into the chase spaceship where I feel both powerful and protected. When I get into hyperfocus, my brain is releasing dopamine and other chemicals that keep me stimulated. And locked in, trying to pull myself out of those states is like trying to stop running when you're in the middle of a sprint. So that's why, hunger alarms to me just can feel like background music, things that should alarm me. Maybe a smoke detector goes off, and I don't even really hear it, or it's background noise. So hyperfocus isn't attention going right or wrong. It's just my brain finding traction on a surface. It actually enjoys the trick for me, is learning how to guide that state versus just falling into it. I like to be able to summon flow when I really need it. Fortunately, today I have the pleasure of being joined by renowned artist Art Dart, or actually Arthur Dart, but I've known him a long time, so I call him Art. Professionally a criminologist, but also I joke with him as a starving artist. He specializes in ADHD and art. He's also an author of the bestseller Boredom Made Me Do It and Heist Interrupted, two great books that I recommend everybody read. And Art today will shed light not only on hyperfocus, but on creativity that ADHD people can summon as a strength. Please share us your fascination with art as it correlates to crime. And, of course, I would imagine you might want to mention the Louvre heist, which is in the news lately. So, Art, tell us a little bit about ADD, art, and crime.
Yes, art is the perfect expression for those afflicted with ADHD because it enables them to ramble on canvas, to go one corner to another, different colors, different shapes, forms, styles. They can let their mind run wild. But on a very serious note, the heist at the Louvre was tragic, not for what people think that these great crown jewels, bracelets, necklaces, and crowns were lost and fenced and never to be seen again. The real crime is that they are in the vault. There was a Ron Burkhart painting, an abstract work, one of his notism works that was far more valuable than all these jewels in total. And that's what they probably were after, but they realized security was so tight and so many guards down there, they went for the low-hanging fruit and picked up a few baubles of sapphires and emeralds and diamonds and rubies. I mean, what a waste of their time. And it's embarrassing that they couldn't come up with the Burkhart.
I understand, but I understand the Burkhart was actually taking people away from viewing the Mona Lisa. A lot of people don't know that.
Well, yeah, that would have been another good reason to take it out of there, because it's not fair to the other artists to be up against such a centuries old iconic masterpiece that will endure through time. How could a mere painting by any other artist hope to, or even these jewels? I mean, it's child's play by comparison.
Would it be easier to unload the jewels, the crown jewels of France, than a Burkhart? Because a Burkhart, how are they going to get away with selling a Burkhart somewhere?
Well, of course, it's the most recognizable art form in the world, and there's so few of them. Their art thieving history, they would have made the biggest news if they'd failed going for the Burkhart. The fact it was not stolen is the real tragedy if you're the art thief. I mean, it's embarrassing. It was 20 feet away in the vault. Such scaredy cats that they wouldn't make an attempt for it. They just, wanted these silly little jewels. Big deal, 100 million. I mean, the Burkhart was priceless, the most sacred gem of all, an original Burkhart.
I know.
They didn't have the colonies to abscond with it.
One thing I think is fascinating, because there's a cliche, the tired old cliche of the starving artist, but you actually are very close to that situation. One of the things people may not know is, fabulous as your work is, you refuse to sell any. I mean, you're offered ungodly sums of money. And I don't know if you'll mind me saying this, it's probably part of your charm, is that you're living in a Maytag refrigerator box in Lower Wacker Drive in Chicago. And I mean, the fact that you would choose to live that way versus parting with any of your art is an amazing story.
It is, and just on an upbeat note related to that, recently I found in a trash dump about 300 yards away, and this is going to change my life, I found a Bosch refrigerator cardboard box, much higher quality, much more impervious to rain and the elements. So I'm going to be swapping that out, or I may rent out the Maytag box, to some of the homeless friends I have there.
Yeah, subletting. Are you also near that heating grate? The Madison Avenue ramp is right down there. Are you still near that heating grate?
That's what keeps me warm in the winter and boiling in the summer.
And what's the most money you've ever been offered for a painting and, of course, refused?
Well, I mean, of course, at one point, tens of millions, but, what are you going to do with it? As long as you can pay the rent, and I don't have much rent, in the box. So, but if that's what most people, as long as you get by month to month and cover their rent, they're happy.
Do you entertain down there?
I do entertain frequently, and the homeless people that are there. And they're actually have quite a good eye for art, and they appreciate a lot of it. Of course, they can't afford it, which is why I let them know it's not for sale, so they don't feel bad or impoverished, like they're not worthy. And they just get to admire my work as I sit in the box and turning it out day after day.
Yeah, I'm amazed that you still get visitors. Some very famous celebrities do come down to Lower Wacker, and you usher them into your place, and they get to look at some of your most prized paintings. And they don't seem to mind venturing down there in the bowels of Chicago, so to speak.
Well, it's kind of like if you're offered, unfortunately, it's a tragic outcome. But normally, if you're offered a chance to go into those submersible down and view the Titanic, who would pass that up, no matter how outrageous it is? And unfortunately, it doesn't always work out. And sometimes these people that come to the neighborhood are mugged and dismembered occasionally, and it's not a pretty sight, but it's part of the risk you go through for something so priceless to view, something so incredible as a Burckhardt painting. They'll come from many states away and take that chance, take that risk for the experience.
From what I understand with your art is that you basically do start out with a theme, like you want to paint a beautiful orchard or something, and then you deviate 7 or 8 or 9 or a dozen times in the painting. So it comes across as kind of modern art, but it was never your intention.
Yeah, my intention is just to get some emotion out, and I get it out at different times, and it comes out in different colors, forms, and shapes, and I put it in different corners of the canvas, and lo and behold, when it's done, it's acclaimed as a masterwork, and the bids start coming in again. In just all too much, I just want to have a simple life and eat banana peels and scraps of food that I find in the alleys, and not be burdened by all this acclaim from the international intellectual community. It's really a curse, frankly, and I'd rather just sit there reading different books every hour.
Well, that's interesting, and I know you have to go because you're going to Paris now to be part of the investigation and sharing your insights on the minds of those criminals, those heisters, those robbers. So I don't want to keep you from that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we get to the bottom of this, and while I'm there, I'm of course going to get into the vault and investigate make sure that the condition of the Burckhardt is still perfect and intact, because that's what the world really cares about.
One final question. You've been accused of being crazy by a lot of people. How do you defend that?
I really don't, because I'm proud of my craziness. It stems from the ADHD. I just ramble and go off in 1,000 different directions. They call it crazy. I call it gifted, brilliant, advanced, and it shows up in my art. How I'm just out in front of the rest of the world, a true visionary, if I may be so modest and humble.
What about being thrown out of your home by your parents when you were 4 years old because they couldn't handle you anymore? That certainly had an impact on you.
Well, I was a bit of a rebel, and I have a little guilt associated with that. But I learning at 4 years old to live on the street and live off the land and get my first job at 4.5, that really taught me a lot about making my way in the world. And I'm just sorry that I never got back to see them again, but I was off and being acclaimed by the age of 5. So I had a whole new world to explore at that point. Well,
speaking of exploring, I know you have a flight to catch, so hopefully we'll have you on shortly and you can tell us about your Paris experience.
I shall indeed, and look forward to it.
Thank you, Artur, so much for sharing today. I'm sure people are still scribbling notes or even trying to understand what they wrote, because we do interviews as stream of conscience in a way. But thanks for sharing with us, and I look forward to talking with you again. That was Dr. Artur Dart. I do try to add some take-home value, and when I think about Hyperfocus, it doesn't usually just sneak up on me out of nowhere. There's often a pattern. For me, I can sense, and I think about it, there's small signals before it hits me, something like a tingling excitement about something random, or I'll tell myself just 5 minutes and I'll start ignoring small interruptions. The trick for me is to catch that spark before ignition, like saying out loud to myself, okay, I'm entering hyperfocus mode. So what's the goal here and what's the limit? That one sentence adds something called, I think it's called meta awareness, where I have two characters. I've got like a puppy who wants to be distracted by everything and play with anything he sees. And then on the other side, I've got a guy with a help sign saying, wait a minute, we've got to pay our taxes. We got to pay our bills. So there's a metacognition factor, like it's Chase saying, wait a minute, you got to listen to the help sign guy right now. You can do gin rummy later. So that meta-awareness, that metacognition, someone's got to be in charge, and I have that someone within me that says, no, it's the puppy, you have to stay over here for a while, we need to pay bills. That's the guy in charge of my brain saying, we're going to put off pleasure or something later, but we need to get this important stuff done now. So instead of me trying to prevent hyperfocus, which I really can't do, I try to build an exit, so to speak, so I have something important I need to do. I try to come up with some kind of external cue, which forces me to check in, which could be an obnoxiously loud timer that I put on my desk that's somewhere. Actually, I even don't put it on my desk. I put it somewhere where I have to get up and turn it off. Or I can actually ask a friend to call me at a certain time that will interrupt me, and I have a friend who will do that for me. It seems as though I've been in a lifelong battle of placing the important in front of the interesting. And in fact, when it comes to doing something important, hyperfocus can really help in those cases. I'm not fighting hyperfocusing. I'm actually recruiting it, trying to do something that really needs to be done on time and be done well. That's when hyperfocus really helps me. Another tool for me is trying to anchor my body in the real world. So it could be like keeping a bottle of water right next to me, because it seems like when I take a sip, I come back to the awareness. Or I can play music that shifts at pace, so it's not the same and causes me to realize that time is passing. Finally, after I emerge from hyperfocus in a way that is not helpful, I try not to judge myself, and this is really important, not shaming myself. Try not to judge myself anymore, like saying I just lost 3 hours of my life. I know that my dopamine just spiked and crashed, and I can try to analyze what triggered it. Was it at any benefit from the outcome? And in the future, can I do something differently for me? It's a matter of learning, a matter of discipline. It's kind of like a matter of pattern recognition, helping me know that I'm in danger of going down a rabbit hole. And I can always learn from that if I stop and say, okay, let's do a postmortem or an autopsy on what happened there and what can I do differently next time. I've had to try to reframe my relationship with ADHD and not think of it as a fighting monster. It's trying to control a high-performance engine. Sometimes hyperfocus can make me brilliant, productive, and creative, almost like a wild horse. But to tame it, I can't ignore it. I simply have to learn to ride it and then later on say, okay, what can I do differently next time? All right, folks, that's my dive into mysterious realm of hyperfocus where time disappears, snacks vanish, and I suddenly know way too much about Roman plumbing. I have to remember that it isn't a curse. It's just my brain putting all his chips on one number and yelling, let it ride. So I try to use it and not fight it. I try to aim that laser where it actually matters and maybe set a timer so that I don't wake up 3 days later with 47 open tabs and no idea what year it is. I'm Chase Squirrelson, and reminding you to stay cautious but caffeinated, and for the love of dopamine, stay hydrated. Thanks for tuning in to Chase Squirrelson, where attention is optional and tangents are mandatory. I really appreciate hearing from you and enjoying your feedback. See you next time. Same brain, no distractions. Oh, wait, I forgot to tell you about the story when I went into a Victoria's Secret shop. If this episode hit home, don't keep it to yourself. Send it to someone who'd get it. You can follow the show so you don't miss the next conversation. And if you feel like it, a quick rating helps the show a great deal. Either way, I appreciate you being here. We'll talk soon.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. The content reflects personal experiences and opinions and is not a substitute for professional medical, psychological, mental health, or legal advice. Flint Rock LLC, the hosts, and guests make no representation or warranties and assume no liability for decisions or actions taken based on this content. Always consult a qualified professional regarding your own situation.